review of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, along with a discussion of the Roadhouse movies on this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Hello and welcome to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's April 6, 2024, and this is episode 121. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just on my website, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's do this thing. Well, again, welcome to the podcast and greetings from Salt Lake City, where it is sunny and then also snowing today. So, welcome to spring, and I hope the weather is nice wherever you may be. Thanks so much for tuning in again. A couple of new films opened up this past weekend in theaters. First up is The First OMEN. This is a horror film from 20th Century Studios. It's written by Tim Smith and Arkasha Stevenson and Keith Thomas, and also directed by Arkasha Stevenson. When a young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, she encounters a darkness that causes her to question her own faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. This film stars Neil Tiger Free, Takif Barham, Sonia Braga, and Bill Nighy, among others. This actually is the sixth Omen film. The first one came out in 1976. It was directed by Richard Donner and starred Gregory Peck and Lee Remick as unsuspecting parents who end up adopting a child named Damien, who is the Antichrist and the son of the devil. So not really for me. This sixth film also is a prequel, and it's about the actual birth of Damien, hence the title. So also not for me. I kind of hope that this will be the last Omen. Again, sorry to all you horror fans out there. The First Omen is rated R by the Motion Picture Association for violent content, grisly, disturbing images, and brief graphic nudity. Next up this past weekend is Monkey Man, which is an action thriller from Universal Pictures. It was written by Dev Patel, Paul Anguilla, and John Colley, and also directed by Dev Patel, and it's his directorial debut. You may remember Dev from films like Slumdog Millionaire and Lion, where he was the star. Now he's directed this action movie. He achieves an astonishing tour de force directing debut with his action-filled thriller about one man's quest for vengeance against the corrupt leaders who murdered his mother and continue to systematically victimize the poor and powerless. Inspired by the legend of Hanuman, and I hope I'm saying that right, and who is an icon embodying strength and courage, Monkey Man stars Patel as the character Kid. Kid is an anonymous young man who ekes out a meager living in an underground fight club where, night after night, he wears a gorilla mask and is beaten bloody by more popular fighters for cash. After years of suppressed rage, Kid discovers a way to infiltrate the enclave of the city's sinister elite. As his childhood trauma boils over, his mysteriously scarred hands unleash an explosive campaign of retribution to settle the score with the men who took everything from him. This film, I've just seen the trailer. It looks ultra violent. In fact, I heard that Dev Patel broke his hand on the first day of shooting one of the film's fight scenes. So there's that. I understand this has a very much like a John Wick kind of vibe. So you'll have to let me know if you see Monkey Man. Monkey Man is rated R by the Motion Picture Association for strong, bloody violence throughout, language throughout, sexual content, nudity, and drug use. So, again, a couple new movies this weekend, The First Omen and Monkey Man. In Classic Cinema Corner this week, Turner Classic Movies has got some cool stuff going on in April. one of the things they're doing is going to be a 13-week series, which is actually starting tonight on April 6th. It's for 13 consecutive weeks. They're calling it 2 for 1, and they're bringing in different filmmakers who are programming a double feature. And it's really kind of a tribute to the history, art form, and allure of the double feature, which has been a staple of moviegoing for decades. So Ben Mankiewicz is going to be hosting, and each Saturday evening he's going to sit down with a different filmmaker who has carefully curated a double bill of films to share. From comforting combinations to surprising and thought-provoking duos, TCM is going to showcase how these films connect, entertain, and speak to each other and the viewer. Tonight's films are programmed by the one and only Martin Scorsese, and they're both from 1948. First one is a Western called Blood on the Moon. And next one is a musical fantasy called One Touch of Venus, which is actually making its TCM premiere. So, interesting films. I've set the DVR, so I'm hoping to check those out. And also just hear what Martin Scorsese has to say about them. Over the next few weeks, we've got specifically next week on April 13th, Olivia Wilde. The actress and director is going to be there. The two films that she has picked are Anti-Mame from 1958, starring Rosalind Russell, and then also Grey Gardens, which is that very interesting documentary about those eccentric women. I don't know if you've ever seen that. That's been a bit of a TCM staple. I've seen it before, and it's definitely interesting. On April 20th, director Paul Thomas Anderson has programmed a couple of films from 1976, The Bad News Bears and Bugsy Malone. And then just to round out April 27th, it's going to be director Ryan Johnson. And he's programmed two films from 1932, Trouble in Paradise and Jewel Robbery. And then it just goes on. We got this great list. There's going to be Spike Lee, Patty Jenkins, Steven Spielberg, Ethan Hawke, David Byrne. Anyway, this just looks like a cool series. So check it out. TCM 2 for 1. Specifics are on the TCM website at tcm.com. I'll put a link to it in the podcast notes on my website. And always cool to broaden your film horizons, and I think this could be a very entertaining way to do it. So in reviews this week, first up, I just wanted to put out my review of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. This opened up a couple of weeks ago. It's still in theaters, and it's a sequel to these other Ghostbusters movies, but most specifically to the film Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out in 2021. So this movie picks up 3 years after the events of Ghostbusters Afterlife, where Callie Spengler, who's again played by Carrie Coon, she's the daughter of the late Egon Spengler, who in the original films was played by Harold Ramis. Then Callie's boyfriend, Gary, who again is played by Paul Rudd. And then Callie's two children, Trevor, who's played by Finn Woodard, and Phoebe, who's played by McKenna Grace. So anyway, we got a lot of names going on, but it's the same two, dark-haired, curly-haired kids that were in Ghostbusters Afterlife. So anyway, and then along with a couple of friends, they have relocated from Oklahoma to New York City to aid in reestablishing the Ghostbusters. And cast members from the original film are back in it again. Ernie Hudson is playing Winston Zeddemore. Dan Aykroyd is there playing Ray Stantz. Bill Murray shows up at some point, as is Annie Potts. Again, all playing the same characters that they played in the original. And also back in the cast is William Atherton, who plays that jerk Walter Peck, who ended up becoming the mayor of New York City. And of course, he hates the Ghostbusters. So after a particularly violent or destructive, maybe I should say, uh, bust of a ghost, uh, Walter Peck, again, this William Atherton character, finds out that Callie's daughter, Phoebe, was involved with this, and that she's a teenager, and that she's not a legal adult and therefore can't work. So in order to appease this jerky mayor, Callie, the mom, decides to bench Phoebe from doing any future field work. And then for me, this is where the film just goes south. So again, kind of a promising setup. Don't wish to bore you with all the details, but I think hopefully it might be helpful. But what happens with this Phoebe character then is that she gets so depressed because she really loved busting ghosts, and she also feels like it's a bit of her calling, right? And she's good at it. And anyway, and plus it's, this whole family connection, right? So anyway, because she's got all this time alone now, she ends up kind of conjuring this other ghost of a teenage girl who has a very troubled past, and she's stuck in limbo. But they have this relationship, and so it really just turns into this. Nothing inappropriate in their relationship, but still, it turns into this like weird teenage angst relationship movie. And I don't go see Ghostbusters for this kind of melodramatic teenage angst. I want to go see Bill Murray cracking jokes, and then action and some scares. And I just didn't feel like this film delivered really well on any of those. I mean, sure, there's a big subplot with ghosts that Kumali Nanjiani shows up and has some mysterious objects that again conjure up this ghost who spoiler alert, causes the deep freeze that eventually happens in the film. But as we've all seen in the trailer, and also the title, right? But it's just so disappointing because I wanted to like it. I thought Ghostbusters Afterlife was pretty entertaining and a nice kind of a touching way to bring the story to our current time, as well as paying respect to the original films. But this for me was a real bore and just a real bummer. So I can't recommend Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I know I've talked to other people who have enjoyed it, so you might enjoy it if you really like Ghostbusters and want to give it a try. But teen angst and not a lot of action or scares did not make a good Ghostbusters movie for this moviegoer. All right, next up are two movies. So one is an old movie and then one is a new one. So the 1980 film Roadhouse, which starred Patrick Swayze and which is really a bit of a cult. I don't know if I'd call it a cult classic, but it's definitely a film with a cult following, has been remade. It's on Amazon Prime, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal. So I just want to talk a little bit about these two movies, because I saw Roadhouse in 1989, and I rewatched it after I saw this new film, this new Jake Gyllenhaal film. Both of these films are on Amazon Prime, so that's on Prime Video. So that's where I watched them this round. So there are some, I think, similarities and comparisons. Number one, did Roadhouse really need to be remade? I think that's a big question for me. The Patrick Swayze Roadhouse is so 1980s, just as far as the look of it. I mean, clearly it was released in 1989, so but Patrick Swayze was really kind of at the apex, after Dirty Dancing and Ghost. But also this is actually a pretty good role for him. He plays a character named Dalton. Dalton is a quiet guy, philosophical. He does Tai Chi, and he's got a major guilt complex going on for some violence from his past. But he also has got some mad bouncer skills. So he becomes a bouncer at this rowdy bar in the Midwest of the U.S. It's in Missouri. It's kind of where the similarity. So in the Jake Gyllenhaal Roadhouse now, Jake Gyllenhaal is an ex UFC fighter, and who also has a guilt complex going on from a violent past, and he decides to relocate to Florida. And so this bar in Florida is where all the stuff takes place. The bar in Missouri is called the Double Deuce, and then this bar in Florida, it's also, as you say, it's in the Florida Keys. It's just called Roadhouse. So yeah, big thumbs down on lack of creativity there. They should at least call it the Double Deuce. I think both of them, both bars, right? Anyway, so I think with the Jake Gyllenhaal version, the setting in a way provides a little more interest because, it's in the Florida Keys, and there's a lot of fancy like drone shooting and kind of overhead stuff, and you really get a sense of the setting. But I don't know. I think that was, a part of the flaw, I think, of the Jake Gyllenhaal film, because it just seems to me, and maybe again just because I've known this Roadhouse film for so much of my life, but the Patrick Swayze one, but a Roadhouse is in the Midwest, right? Anyway, or like in Texas or something. But anyway, so both characters are named Dalton, and they both have they're really good at stitching up themselves after they get in a battle or a brawl, but they have a great common line that both films use, that Dalton says. Again, both the characters are named Dalton, and the signature line is, "No one ever wins in a fight." And then there's the villain, right? The villain who's hiring the thugs to wreak havoc at the bar. In the Patrick Swayze movie, the primary villain is played by Ben Gazzara, and he is a crime lord who runs this town in Missouri. So basically, he just wants to just be the king of everything. And then, Patrick Swayze is a big threat to that. In this new version with Jake Gyllenhaal, there's Billy Magnuson plays this character who's trying to obtain the Roadhouse in the Florida Keys for nefarious purposes. He wants to own all the real estate and do a big real estate development thing. So anyway, there's a love interest in both films. They both fall in love with their respective doctors when they ended up having to go to the hospital. I think that with Patrick Swayze, it's got they've got a little more chemistry than with the Jake Gyllenhaal character. But anyway, big deal. And then of course these films are like incredibly violent. Like there's so much fighting going on, and there's also a lot of music because they're at a bar that's got all this live music going on. I'm also just thinking about what musicians are going to want to play at this bar with these violent brawls that happen every night. frankly, I really disliked this Jake Gyllenhaal version. I give it a 1 out of 5 stars. It was such a total waste of my time. The Patrick Swayze one, not that it's good. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars just because there's, of course, some sentimental value. I'm a child of the 80s. Some of these 80s films, I just, it's a guilty pleasure. It's I guess a little, I just felt it was a little more satisfying. Patrick Swayze's character is a little more interesting, the way that they've written his Dalton character. And again, it just worked better for me, but neither of them are that great because again, it's Roadhouse and whatever. So I can't say I'd recommend either of them. But if you're really going to watch a version of Roadhouse, I say watch the Patrick Swayze version from 1989. Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Links and more information about the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my website at moviespastandpresent.com. Subscribe to the podcast where you listen to podcasts, and follow me on Instagram. I'm at moviespap, as in past and present. As always, I hope people enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be safe out there and dedicate yourself to the truth.
Bye.